we're kind of seeing where the justice system goes. We're seeing where the kind of logical consequence of that is. Now we need somebody like a Don Corleone.
Yeah, we need a Don Corleone to bring us justice.
I mean, could you imagine what it would be like to like live with something like weregild? You know, the idea that every transgression you make, everything you do, like from every speeding ticket all the way up to like, you know, murder and whatever, is all your whole family is on the hook for that. Can you imagine what a kind of tamping down effect that would have on like behavior? You know, so people think that this idea of like blood feud and weregild and like, you know, every family, you know, if you fuck with one of us, you fuck with all of us, that is basically is this sort of like, you know, tinderbox ready to go up in flames at any point. It's actually quite the opposite, and people kind of have the wrong view of it. Really, I think something like that would work very, very well today. And part of the reason why it's not allowed to work well is because the absence of that kind of like local, you know, self-policing organism justifies like, you know, the exponential growth of the state, which is of course the state, that's the logic according to which it operates. It always has to expand, so it always has to destroy these intermediary structures. You know, the local don that keeps order in his neighborhood, he has to be done away with. And it's kind of going back to the whole Mussolinian fascism thing. But yeah, it's interesting though, because of the Greek connection with the Sicilians, because of course this has a very long history in Greece. In fact, there was the most famous Greek tragedy of all, well, maybe not the most famous, but certainly one of the most famous is the Oresteia, which is this trilogy of Greek tragedies that, I mean, what it is ostensibly is it's the story of what Agamemnon's family goes through when they come back from the Trojan War, and the sort of like, you know, the ELI 5 of the whole trilogy. It's the only Greek tragedy that we have the trilogy of, is that it's basically the transition from the old blood feud Indo-European Mycenaean Greek manner of like the way that the legal system basically, the transition from that to the justice of the city, where the city basically takes the role on for itself to mediate disputes so that you don't have to have these blood feuds. And it's interesting because you can kind of see this transition from blood feud to a kind of like centralized state authority. And even in the Greek tragedy area, so we're talking like, you know, 400 BC or 500 BC or something like that era, you can already see that it's kind of starting to move in a quasi or proto-liberal direction, right? Away from this localized structure towards a more centralized structure where it's trying to eliminate intermediaries and all that. And the bottom line from this trilogy is that it's a justice system is better than blood feud, because otherwise you get this runaway, you know, a blood feud, like war that just never ends kind of thing. And here's the thing though, we are on the other side of that. We're kind of seeing where the justice system goes. We're seeing where the kind of logical consequence of that is. If you take it seriously enough and you let it run its course, it's going to end up where we are today. So a justice system is better than blood feud until it isn't. And now we need somebody like a Don Corleone. I mean, no Fed posting. Obviously, I'm not calling for criminal activity. I would never condone anything like that, nor would you. But it's interesting. At the moment, we kind of need a sort of like, we need to have these intermediary structures rebuilt, basically, because otherwise, it leads to this tyrannical top-down state organization where it's like, it's just completely top-heavy and unstable. And the worst thing that could happen would be to see it collapse because it is so top-heavy. So maybe we need not a criminal organization, but maybe we need local fathers like we've never needed them before. So
Yeah. We need a Don Corleone to bring us justice.
yeah.
You're listening to an episode of the latest Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette. If you like what you hear and want more, head on over to culturedads.com for podcasts every week.
Exactly. And I would say for people who are like, oh, that doesn't work or whatever, that just ends in blood feuds. I'll tell you, this idea of holding a family accountable and this kind of this tribal instinct is baked into our psychology. I can't tell you how many teachers at the school that I went to hated my brother just because they hated me. It's just like baked into us to judge the family based on the actions of, it's like in us, right? There were times that I started shit with some guy's brother just because I had a beef with that guy. You know what I mean? We've all done it. It's like baked into our psychology. And another thing that the Godfather shows is that this structure, the clan structure, is not an endless blood feud. And in fact, it's like an immune system that like it creates an equilibrium on its own. And the example for this, and this is something that happened all throughout La Cosa Nostra. Like you always hear in mafia, blood is bad for business. Blood is bad for business, and that was very, very true. Before you weren't allowed to just go whack people. You had to go talk to the boss, and they had to have a meeting, and they had to do this, and then they gave it to a guy that they trust. And, it wasn't towards the end with guys like John Gotti, who is just a complete degenerate, that things went off the rails. In The Godfather, if you remember, they got into I can't remember which family, the Tatalias they're beefing with, right? Yeah. And they're beefing with the Tatalias. Don Corleone gets blasted while he's in the hospital. Sonny's like, we got to hit back. They go and they shoot the Tatalia boy. And then in retaliation for that, Sonny gets whacked. And Don Corleone, is heartbroken and all this kind of stuff. And instead of going all out war, they call a sit down. And Don Corleone says to Tatalia, he's like, what does this bring? We're going to keep killing each other. Is that going to bring back my son? Is that going to bring back your son? Or is that going to heal our broken hearts? What can we do to fix this? And it becomes this equilibrium. It becomes this like immune system that balances itself out, because nobody is heartless, right? These guys aren't heartless. They love their families. They love their kids. What parent in their right mind wants to go into a situation where their kids are going to die? Nobody. Even if you're a crime boss. So they made peace, and they had like this really sincere hug, and they made peace and everything like that. And then they get in the car, and he's like, so what, we got to worry about Talia or whatever? And then Don Corleone says, no, I now know it was Barzini the whole time. It was the other guy. So he's like, no, Talia, even though he killed my son and I killed his son, that's forgiven, because we know that was just tit for tat. That was just the consequence of us having this blood feud. It was this other guy that was the problem, that was meddling. So he like let the whole thing go because he knew that it was going to result in more blood. So these blood feuds aren't like these endless wars and all this kind of stuff. It's this self-regulating immune system that we actually have baked into our psychology, that not only keeps things in order, does a better job of distributing justice in society, but it also holds people accountable. As Mike said, if your family is going to be held accountable for everything you do, from a parking ticket, speeding ticket, all the way up to murder, you're going to act a different way. If you know that your behavior results in something like, if you steal something from a store, that store owner might come and like beat up your little brother or something, then you know that your actions have far more weight. When we get into this liberal idea of nuclear family, which is a result of capitalism and liberalism, when we get into ideas of individualism, when your actions just reflect just your little individual, your little self, then it has far less weight, right? How many of these like serial killers and stuff would have continued doing their serial killer, or like any of these like these criminals that did like evil shit over like multiple times, would have continued doing that, knowing that maybe your family wealth would get taken from you, knowing that maybe some guys would show up and burn your house down, and maybe your mom would get burnt down. Like, they probably would behave a little bit different. They probably would have taken their sick behavior and did it in a different direction.
You're listening to an episode of the latest Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette, where two fathers and community leaders discuss modern culture from a timeless perspective. Head on over to culturedads.com for podcasts every week.